Welcome to this online brown bag series on follies in fragile states. My name is Ian Quick, and in these 6 short videos, I'm going to explain how stabilisation failed in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, without silly jargon and without a fundraising agenda. This is the first and introductory segment, and I want to start it here with these guys. This photo comes from November 2012. The M23 rebel group had just broken from the National Army and seized the city of Goma, and they had organized mandatory political indoctrination sessions for the territorial police. Their emotions are plain to see. Rage, clearly, but harder to look at than that. A kind of despair. And the story behind those faces is that they had been rush deployed a few years before, 1,000 miles away from their homes. They had been crowded into leaky tents, spat on, shot at, all in the name of stabilisation, and then it had all ended here with this rather ham-fisted act of political theatre by the M23. The context for this, the bigger story, is that UN peacekeepers first deployed into the DRC in 1999, so a major city had now fallen to insurgents a full 13 years after that. A full 7 years, moreover, after the central government and international agencies had said that they would stabilize this exact area that we're looking at, and well north of $10 billion of expenditure over that period. I myself was working with the UN during this time. We pushed these guys out to the field. We gave them rifles. We prodded them to arrest the bad guys. We built the building that they're standing in front of as a training facility. This happened alongside a wide array of other interventions with the army, the judiciary, civil administration. So this was a quite unambiguous failure moment, both for the government and for its partners. It was a big enough failure that the foreign press woke up after 5 or 6 years of not paying much attention to the country. I've extracted some of the headlines here, and the question they're asking is basically the same. How could this happen? After all that effort, all that blood and treasure, how did we still come to this point? This is really fundamentally a fair question, and it's the one I want to answer in this online series. It's also a question with importance well beyond the Congo. The hard fact is that we have tried to stabilize a lot of fragile countries since the end of the Cold War, and the track record is simply not very good. I've compiled here some of the iconic high-profile failure moments just from the last decade. If we read from top left, Iraq, Sri Lanka, Cote d'Ivoire, Haiti, South Sudan, Libya, Mali, Congo again, the Central African Republic. And towards the end of this list, these are very much current challenges. We could perhaps add Burundi, Syria, perhaps Yemen in a year or two. So as you look at these tiny vignettes, I invite you to ask yourself, did we do the learning? When these failure moments arrived, did we look backwards and ask ourselves, in a serious way, were the foundations of the work really sound? The Congo case is a good entry point for this. First, because it is one of the longest standing patients of the kinds of treatment that we prescribe for fragile countries. 15 years of UN peacekeeping, large bilateral aid programs, large humanitarian aid programs. The second reason is because it gives us a very human and very dramatic set of stories to understand the dynamics that are at work in these environments. The job that I've given myself with these talks is thus to tell these stories truthfully and compellingly. The job I want to give you is to ask yourself throughout, is this just a Congo story? Or do we find similar dynamics, similar approaches, and similar outcomes elsewhere? Here's how I want to proceed. Think of that failure moment in 2012 as the head of the fish. The idea is then to trace backwards and identify the contributing factors that led us to that point. I call these the Five Follies. Follies in the sense that we were all working very hard, but we were not getting anywhere in the larger scheme of things. In some sense, our approaches simply were not addressing the real problems in front of us. For the purposes of this online series, I've decided to focus on 2 of these. These are the makeover fantasy and geography denial. These are a manageable piece of the puzzle because they are both about expectations in a context that faced enormous challenges of every description. When I arrived in DRC, it was dead last in the world on the Human Development Index. Its government is at or near the bottom on virtually every index of technical capacity. In that sort of context, what was doable? What was it sensible to plan and to promise? In the following sessions, I will transfer each of these follies in turn to the head of the fish and again trace backwards. What were our approaches? What were the key assumptions? Most importantly, how did those intersect with the local environment, with the human element, with the psychology of the people that we were working with? That's the introduction, to set the scene and explain where we're going. Next up is part 2 on the makeover fantasy. So please click on through, and I'll show you what the exit strategy looked like and how we found out the hard way that we were way off base. Thank you.